Well, hello. I see the sedative has worn off and the chloroform as well. I surmise that you have a few questions as to your current whereabouts, and also what has happened to you. My name is Jeremy Maddox, but you may call me the Catalyst. And welcome to the first ever edition of Misogynist Death Trap. You are currently seated in the interior of a giant oyster shell. Oh, careful now, those restraints. You're not supposed to try to break them. I promise that will fail. You see, they're made of live hell reef coral. So, you're not going anywhere. Trust me, I got this. Okay? It seems you came upon my little endeavor under the ocean. Yes, we've been drilling into Atlantis, and you just couldn't help yourself. You had to snoop around and alert the pragmatist to my operations. Well, I can't allow that to continue. So, let me walk you through how I'm going to take you out of this life. I got the whole thing rigged up. You won't have to worry about a thing, baby. Okay, now, see this over here? You know how you love the mermen and you champion their rights at every turn? Yeah. Okay, so what I've done is I've skinned several of them alive, and you can wear them. Yes, you can now wear them as clothing, as clothing and apparel. Because I'm just that kind of guy, see? When those foppish mermen see that you're clearly in danger and that they think that you're one of their own, of course they'll be compelled to attempt a rescue. But let me tell you why that's not going to happen. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Look at me. Pay attention, because there will be a test on this later. Okay, now, I've been specially breeding these new kinds of mutant eels for untold decades now. Yeah, I've been planning this a while. And they're called brimstone land eels, right? They're fierce enemies of the mermen. Now, when the brimstone land eels get a whiff of the merman scent, thanks to the skinned merman husks that you are wearing as clothing and apparel, they're going to know right away that the mermen are trying to be the little do-gooders that they are, The good thing about brimstone land eels, is that they are not impervious to water. No, in fact, they can blaze a fiery trail across water. It's quite a defiance of the current periodic table of elements. Because, hey, what are we without innovation, baby, right? Wait, you crying? Don't cry. You're going to give yourself to science. You should be proud. And no, the pragmatist is not coming within a foot of this place. Even he can't save you now. Did you just break that? Did you just break my restraints? Or wait a minute. Or where are you going? Wait a minute, let's start over. Come on. I know I can make this work. Please give me one more chance. Give me one more chance to effect a misogynist death trap. I promise I'll do it right this time, baby. Not even one more chance? But I'm the catalyst. I'm supposed to make bad things happen. I understand. It's not me, it's you. Any friends who might dig the supervillain lifestyle? Well, will you at least tell me that I'll never get away with it before you go?
You'll never get away with this. I already did. I already did. I already did. You'll never get away with this. I already did. I already did. I already did. You'll never get away with this. I already did. I already did.
And welcome to Surreal Sermons, Episode 5. Joining me in a little while will be Laura Lee Bahr to speak about her Wonderland Award-winning debut, Haunt, through Fungasm Press, and also her contribution to the Explosions anthology to benefit the war-torn land of Laos, I believe is the pronunciation. I'm sure she'll correct me on that. Second guest will be Adam Cesare, joining me to talk about his re-release of Tribesmen through Deadite Press, and also his probably his finest work to date, The Summer Job, and his Broken River Books debut, The First One You Expect. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Jeremy Maddox, and I am not wearing underwear.
I sent pictures through the mail, well documented and very detailed, to politicians and big celebrities, but none of them are believing in me. And I wait their response. Some said none, most said cops. But man, it's a dire situation, and I will risk the public humiliation.
And the guest I'm about to bring on has a rapidly expanding trophy case that includes the Wonderland Award of 2008, Best Screenplay for her film The Little Death, and she took home the Ad Astra from the Tallgrass Film Festival, and that's Garrett Cook's favorite author, Laura Lee Bahr. Laura, thank you for joining me.
Hi.
Okay, I know you can give me a little more than that. You talked my ear off before I hit record.
How's it going? I'm doing very well here in Los Angeles. It's a hot day. It's a beautiful July 4th weekend. My cats are puddles on the ground. How is it going there for you?
Well, my pupils are dilated, so I guess I'm doing good.
Your pupils are dilated. Why?
Because I'm doing good.
That's good. That's good.
Okay, so let's talk about Haunt. This won the Wonderland Award for 2008, and Garrett Cook has cited it as his personal favorite author.
2011.
Oops.
There was some other beautiful book that was 2008. Let me see if I can remember which one it was. But I can't remember which one it was. But it was a long line of fantastic books in the Wonderland Award world.
That was sloppy journalism on my part. I meant to say 2012, and I still would have been wrong.
Yeah, they all kind of blend together for me, actually, the years from probably 2000 on. They all kind of seem like one long year. But, I mean, that's kind of like what it's like in Los Angeles, because we don't have seasons. It all kind of blend into one hot day.
Is it tough to make it out there? I mean, as hard as they say?
Well, I mean, any time you live in a city, it's hard to, I think, it's harder in a city to, make your rent and eat, and the basic quality of life is always less, and it takes more to kind of get at your basic level. So yeah, it's a lot of scrapping and scraping and trying to figure out how to get by. But I mean, everything that's good about it is also, what's bad about it in a lot of ways, because it's such a big city and there's so many people here. That's also what makes it so exciting. There's always, a new scene. There's always new people. There's always exciting art happening. It's an incredible. I love it here. I love living here. It's not an easy place to live, but it's a lot easier to live here than it is in some of the other big cities. So.
Okay. Now, what drew you to Fungasm? Did you know John Skip, who runs Fungasm, beforehand? How did you meet the people from Eraserhead?
Yeah, so Skip and I go way back. Actually, I met him at an audition for a music video, and I can't remember, like I said, they all kind of blend together what year. I think it was probably like 2006, 2005, I don't know. Around then, I met him, and I did a music video with him. And then we started collaborating on a few things, and we worked on some screenplays together. And then when I went back to taking some time working on Haunt, after I'd finished it and was sending it out to publishers, I asked him to read it and make recommendations to me. And he read it, and he said, I know what to do with this. He didn't use that voice. He'd say, I know what to do. I won't go into John's impersonation, but he said he felt that it would be an appropriate book for the Eraserhead Bizarro world. And he started the Fungasm imprint, and Haunt was the first book on that imprint. So pretty much, Skip, I mean, you can pretty much thank Skip for anything having to do with Haunt, because he basically brought it from, a stack of pages into the book that it is. And I have to tell you just what a fantastic editor he was on it, because everything from the cover to, I love the cover and the way that it's laid out. He brought those people aboard, and he had the eye for really making it look and feel the way it does. I could not be happier with the way the product as the book turned out. Yeah, he's amazing. He's awesome. He's the best.
And you put Haunt in a box for 7 years, and then what made you want to dig it up again? Was it when Skip?
It makes me want to dig it out again. I have I'm a projectaholic. I pretty much don't feel okay unless I have 50 things that I'm doing at any given time. And so subsequently I'll have things that I'm working on, and then they kind of come to a standstill, and then I put them away and move on to something else. And I felt like, I know what it was. I'd just gotten my master's thesis, and it was really hard to write my thesis. I really did not enjoy doing it as much as I thought I would. But I forced myself to finish it, and after finishing it, I had the understanding that if I could do that, I could do the hard labor required to finish my novel the way that I felt like it should be finished. Because even though I finished it up to a point, I hadn't made it into something that I would want to read. And that's kind of my own barometer. Is this something I would want to read? Is this something I would enjoy? Is this something that, I would be like, yes, because I'm an avid reader, but at the same time, I can be very fickle. So after I worked that hard on something that dry and boring, I felt like I can work that hard on something cool, exciting. So I went back to it and spent the time to, I think I took out 150, 200 pages. I went back and did the not fun work, the sculpting, the cutting, the massaging, the pasting, that stuff.
And the puzzling. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
Oh no! I'll keep talking forever. You got to jump in there.
The puzzling construction of Haunt. Was that arranged after you completed the story, or did you actually make a conscious effort to assemble that while you were writing? It seems like something that would come in the polish later. I don't know.
The what of Haunt?
Okay. The overall structure of Haunt. It seems like maybe you took some parts out to engineer that structure, if that makes sense.
Yes, that is exactly. So initially what I had done with the book is it was a choose-your-own-adventure type structure in that it would say, you do this, turn the page, blah, blah, blah. You do this, turn the page, blah, blah, blah. And then it also had an option where you could read it straight through. And but it warned you several times not to do that. But if you decided to do that and read it straight through, you got this other weird, trippy adventure going on where you also would see all the other things. So what I decided to do when I went back through it is to take out the page turning, to take out the elements of it that were piecemeals like that, and make it one story told in these different realities.
Right, and it's told from 3 different perspectives. That's Simon, the journalist, who kind of has an attraction. If I recall, see, this is where it gets murky because they're all 3 connected in different ways, and it's almost, I don't know, it's almost like their natures betray each other throughout the book. So it's like you said, very schizophrenic. So I'm failing here. Help.
Yeah. So basically, you have Simon. He has his story. You have your story, and you are a very distinct character. Not you as maybe you person are, but you as this person is. And then you have Sarah, and she is a character, and then you have me. I'm a character, and me, the personal pronoun, is the ghost telling the story. So you have these different realities. And one of the things about the way it is structured is that if you could look at the world, if you look at the world in terms of, let's say, probably butchering particle physics and string theory and all that, but if there were all these multiple realities and the different choices you made led to different consequences, and you would have different lives based on really simple choices that you made. If you could see where each of those choices would have led you, that is the sort of wheel of what haunt is. But my theory in there, and what I wrote the book around, is that regardless of which choice you make, your results, while they may be drastically different, are all in the same world. They all kind of blend together. So even if you had chosen A instead of B, you may have a more happy sort of ending or a more satisfying sort of ending, but you're in the same, it's all you. It's all the same world. And to me, that is how I feel about the universe, that regardless of the choices that you make, it can lead to different quality of life. It can lead to different results. But in a way, it's always you experiencing it. So it's all going to go through that filter. It's your mechanism and your imagination and your reality. So whether you're happy or sad or whatever's happening to you, you have one constant, which is yourself. But that's all of us. So we're all interacting in that way. So yes, it can be confusing, but if you just kind of go with it like a dream, it makes sense in the way dreams do.
Okay, so I think I understand. So your whole approach to life and storytelling, maybe it could be considered Zen a little bit, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, not every story, but definitely this one. Definitely this story. And to me, the other real parallel between just, there's a Zen sort of like, how do I experience life? But then the other equally important element of that is love. How do we experience love and obsession and sex? And that is the other, sort of piece of that. How do we connect with this world in our body and in our hearts. So a lot of, I think, what obsession becomes is this ghost that you have of the other person. You start to think about this other person, and they become not what they are, but what you have created them to be.
And how do you follow up a book like Haunt? I imagine you're still trying to figure that out, right?
Well, I have a couple boats here. I have a boat meeting book. I have a couple boats here that I just have to finish building them, and then they're going to sail. But yeah, I have a couple follow-ups that are strong that I'm super excited about, but I haven't finished them yet. But they're in various stages of completion, and when it starts raining, I'll have to take them out. And then it starts, I guess this is my Noah's Ark analogy, I don't know. But yes, I'm working on them as I can, and they, are there. I know what they are. I just have to finish assembling them and getting them ready to move on to that scene.
And so, like the character in the book, do you prefer a typewriter to do your writing?
Actually, I don't. I have two old school Remingtons. Basically, when I find old typewriters, if I can afford them, I'll buy them because I love them, but I don't write on them. Now, you have somebody like famous author Michael Hansen. He writes exclusively on typewriters. I mean, he's a hero that way, but no, I use a computer. I delete too many things. I mean, I'm obsessed with, I hate this paragraph. Gone. Oh, wait, I love that paragraph. I need to put it back in. Yeah, I'm a big copy, paste, delete, move things around sort of person. So.
It's too much stress, right? It's like you're almost put on the spot if you try to write on a typewriter, right?
Right.
Well, what's Michael Hansen going to do, and Harlan Ellison for that matter? These types who prefer the typewriter, what are they going to do in a few years when there are no ink ribbons left? Because didn't they stop making them?
I think I got this. I think you can still get them from China because this one that I have, it had a new ribbon that they had ordered from China, like everything else, and. And then I met somebody down in, what was it, in Venice? I was in Venice, and they had old typewriters, and he knew somebody who, worked on all this stuff. And they do have ways that you can find ribbon and things like that. It's just not immediately accessible.
Okay. Now, I've got to know, as a little side note here, what is this preoccupation you have with the Osmonds? You're currently trying to create a mixed drink that you want to...
I did create a mixed drink. I did. I finally did it. The Donny Osmonds. My obsession with the Osmonds is I grew up Mormon in Utah. And so the Osmonds were, my favorite color was purple because Donnie's favorite color was purple. I mean, if you grew up a Mormon in Utah, I guess probably not now, but back when I did, then the Osmonds were like the greatest thing ever. And I was, I had posters of them in my room. Then, of course, I forgot about it. But they're still, I saw them, they did a holiday show for the Pantages last year. I ended up going and seeing it. And they're so great. I mean, they're the Osmonds. They're great the way, they're show people. They get up there and they dance and sing their hearts out and, hug people in the audience. I'm a big fan of performers. I'm a huge fan of actors, singers of all. I love people who can get up and put on a show. I love it. So.
Now, what about the mixed drink? The Donny Osmond, what are the ingredients?
So what I found is, for the Donny, you just need vodka and sparkling blueberry juice, and that'll give it that lovely purple color. And it's very delicious, very refreshing. You can also put a little squirt of wine in it if you want a little bit more tart. But just vodka, blueberry juice or sparkling blueberry juice, or you can even use grape juice probably, and then a little, wine if you want a little bit more of a kick. But what I'm really excited about was the Marie, which let's see if I can remember it exactly. But the Marie was whiskey, kombucha, I think cherry, a little bit of cherry juice.
I believe so.
Cherry was in the Donnie. But yeah, so, the Marie is very pink and pretty, too. Of course. Depends on if you like vodka or whiskey. I tend to be more of a whiskey person. But.
Now, before we move on to your growing filmography, what about and forgive me if this is getting too deep, but the one night stand that inspired Haunt? Can you talk about that at all, even the scantest of details?
Yes, I'd forgotten I ever mentioned that, but it didn't inspire. A part of one night stand inspired it. A part of it is obsessive. My own obsessive love inspired it. But yes, there was a one night stand which I am terrible at. Like I'm very. I think I'm super. I understand sex in a very cerebral way. It's all just sex, blah blah blah. But I mean, emotionally, I love that person. We made out, and we have to be together forever. I mean, I've been with the same guy now for 8 years, and I'm very, I guess, spiritually and emotionally and physically monogamous. Even though I'm intellectually, I feel like I'm, super polygamous, I guess. But anyway, so I had a one night stand, and it was one of those things where, which a person who was very, very different from me, and that person really inspired the James character, is the best way I can put it. A one night stand I had kind of was like, that person is like that. so now, there's that person walking around who's just like Richard Jameson, Missouri Jameson.
Okay. Now, I think that's a good segue to talk about your upcoming your new film that's in pre-production currently, Boned. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I would like to send people to bonesthemovie.com so they can look at that and see what that's all about. We're going into production in 2 weeks, and it's really exciting. The star, that Angela Landis, is just a beautiful, amazingly talented actress, and I wrote the script for her. We wanted to work together on a project, and she inspired me to create this character for her. That and my obsession with noir. So it's very much an homage to the Maltese Falcon, in the same way the Big Lebowski is an homage to the Big Sleep.
See, I didn't know that.
If you ever see the Big Lebowski, in my opinion, is a far superior movie to the Big Sleep. But, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What is Boned about? You say it's an homage to noir. What can you tell us a little bit about the plot?
Yeah, it's a comedy. It's a comic noir, basically in the same way that the old school noirs talk about the seedy underbelly of crime in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. To me, Bones, the heart and soul of it, it's about what few people outside of Los Angeles really understand, which is the struggle, scrappy underbelly of the people hustling to be actors in Los Angeles, and what that looks like, what that feels like. So that's Sam, that's the lead character. She's a dog walker actress, and she ends up getting pulled into a mystery about a missing Maltese. There's a handsome doctor asks her to watch this dog, and her partner ends up getting shot, and so it's a whole mystery, introducing all of these elements of characters of Los Angeles that are particular to Los Angeles that you wouldn't believe unless you saw them. But they're not. You'll see the movie. You'll be like, those people aren't real, but they are. They really are. It's a town of characters. A lot of them.
Now, is it tough surprising the con and Sundance crowds? I imagine you've been to a few of those festivals, right?
I have not been to Con or Sundance. I have been to lots of littler festivals. I think the biggest festival was the Los Angeles Film Festival. But in terms of like the festival world, it's a lot. It's a similar sort of, there's the con and the Sundance, and the sort of big shining jewels of independent cinema, and then you have all these other festivals that are their own thing. One of my favorite festivals actually is the Tallgrass Film Festival in Wichita, Kansas, and that film festival, their logo is stubbornly independent, and that's what they are. I mean, they are all about indie movies. So, I mean, when you're talking independent movies these days, independent movies can be, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million pictures. It just means that or $10 million pictures. They just mean that the studio didn't finance them. So they're independent because they're not financed by a studio. But when we think of independent movies, when most of us think of independent movies, we think of them more like, we're gonna do this on $1 and a dream. We're gonna, get our film crew together. We're gonna get our actors. We're gonna go out there. We're gonna make a movie. But the reality is, the independent cinema is such a huge. I mean, independent cinema is what cinema is now. So there's the big festivals, and then there's a million other little festivals. And those littler festivals, like the Tallgrass Festival, these smaller festivals, are really homes truly independent cinema. So yeah, I have not been to Cannes, Kong, or Sundance, maybe someday. Okay.
Now, let's see. You debuted film-wise, or at least as a writer, with 2003's Jesus Freak, which I happened to see the trailer for, and I can't believe I've never heard of this movie. There's a really captivating scene right at the credits in the trailer where the main character Lily, who you played, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And she's across this field or road in front of a field or something. They're like right across from each other with the credits above the two of you, and there's this long, vast gulf of space between the two of them. Like one has to come to the other, and that's great. I don't know, cinematography, or there's some tension there that really resonates. Now, how much input did you have as the writer? Did you have any input with the director, also being an actress in it?
Yeah, actually, that movie is it's filmed in my hometown in Portales, New Mexico. My hometown being known as 14. And we lived, we kicked my mom out of her house and shot there. We also lived in a juvie and reintegration center that was currently abandoned. Was currently not being used. And the owner was generous enough to donate it to this home for us all. So we all lived together in this juvie and reintegration center on South Avenue D. Shaved, and this was, shot this movie over, I think it was 4 weeks, and it was incredible. And so all of the locations in the movie were specific locations that I had written for, and the producer of Amy Dawn Anderson, who produced the movie, was just incredible. And she and the other producer, Pusop, was down there and, just started rallying the community who was, and Portales, 12,000 people. They were so giving and generous. And, all the permits. They gave us all the permits for free. They gave us all the locations for free, and so we were able to make that movie. It was definitely a special project in terms of the amount of community that we had making it, both as a crew and the community. So I was heavily involved in, pretty much every aspect of that.
Okay. Now, what are your thoughts on method acting? Are you a method actor? Because, and what I mean is, to people who may not know, it's basically doing research for a part. If you're going to play a certain character that's so vastly different, you will try to experience the same things that they will in order to gain sensorial data for the part, right?
I'm not method at all, but I mean, I love doing research. I'm all about spending. I mean, I think working on a character is one of the greatest joys of an actor. I love working and figuring it out, but I'm definitely more of the to me, each character takes a different approach. So you have some characters you work on that are, very subtle and very real, and you have to really make sure that character is something that is believable on camera. So that's going to take one kind of process. And then you have characters who are completely over the top, and you have to, put on a beard and roll over a bunch of boxes and get shot in the back and put silly string out, And I have a character like that. So you have a very different process for that kind of character than you would for, another character. So for me, it's sort of, you look at what the character needs to do and bring to the project, and then you create a process based on that.
And the Eclectic Company Theater, that is run by you, correct?
It is not run by me, but I am on the board. I have been a member there now for, 8 years or so. 9? I don't even know. Let's see.
And the play Prayer, it just recently debuted through that theater, correct?
Yes, and it is, yes. So I've been a part of that theater for a long time, and, it's a member-run theater, and Prayer is this beautiful, exquisite multimedia piece that I saw at the Arts Fair LA, and one of my friends, and actually a friend of John Skipp's as well, had directed that, and so I, twisted her arm to come over to the Eclectic and bring it there, and it's really exciting. I love theater. Theater to me is, one of the most exciting forms of art out there. And it's really cool when you get to see something that is very compelling and emotional and completely different. So Prayer, it's based on the dreams of the creators. They worked together with their dreams. They created these personas and to make this beautiful multimedia song cycle piece. Beautiful.
Okay. And let's see. Also, you have a story coming up in Explosion, Stories of Our Landmined World. And tell me a little bit about who that's going to benefit. We can throw the web address out there. It's to benefit the conditions of the war-torn land of, and I think I'm pronouncing this right, Laos, in the post-Vietnam landscape, right? Tell me all about that.
So Scott Bradley put this anthology together, and it is to benefit the Mine Advisory Group, and they're a nonprofit group. This anthology is really cool, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. And yes, all of the proceeds go to the Mine Advisory Group. What they do is they go into different countries and to different places where they have been devastated by landmines, and they work to remove the landmines. And that's the most basic way to describe what they do. But on their website, it describes all the different facets of what they do in terms of education and building community, and just an incredible group of people. And I think it's hard for us as Americans to imagine what it would be like to live in a place where, you know, you could walk out in your backyard and have something explode all of a sudden. But I mean, the number of landmines that were put in these places, I mean, they're still there. They haven't gone off, or things that, you know, were supposed to go off and didn't go off. And so it's a group that goes in and tries to help these communities.
Okay, and what is your story for that anthology again?
It's called Lost Dog.
Okay, and you say the address is magamerica.org/keep child safe, and there are dashes between those last three words?
Yes, yeah. I believe that's it. Yeah, and then the anthology is called Explosions, Stories of Our Landmine World. And there's some just incredible authors who are part of it. And it's edited by Scott Bradley, and just incredible people who are part of that anthology.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, what is Lost Dog about? I didn't give you a chance to finish that.
It's a story, so it's connection to, it's a story of a man who lives in an apartment in Los Angeles, and his dog has gone missing. He was hiking with it and went missing. And he basically is trying to find his dog, so he got posters and things like that. And at the same time, he's trying to find a way to deal with the fact that his father, who is a photojournalist, you know, died years ago. His father was in a place as a photojournalist and was killed by an exploding mine. And his sort of coming to terms with, even though he hasn't thought about it for a while, but the emotion of his dog is bringing up, you know, this other thing he hasn't dealt with, which is his father basically choosing to go into countries and, you know, take pictures rather than stay home and be a full-time father. So it's a different sort of story for me. I tend to write about, you know, ghosts and demons and psychopaths. So this is a more, I guess, very real sort of story. And I worked in an archive for a while, and one of the things we did was archive photojournalists, and one of those photojournalists had a similar story in that he had died very young in a situation similar. And so I spent a lot of time kind of looking at the pictures that he had taken and thinking about the people that he had worked with, and thinking about, you know, what kind of life that is when you decide that what you're going to do with your life is go into basically like being a repo man. You go into the situations where other people are going out.
To sum it up, I guess with this story, you wrote about real ghosts, so it's not that much of a stretch, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Good one. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, before we wrap this up, I've got to know, what is it about noir? Because there's also that sensation in Haunt a bit. What is it about noir that keeps bringing you back? Do you think it's an exaggeration of ourselves, or do you think it's a simplification, like a return to the primitive for us?
The thing I love about it, and this is classic noir for me. I'm, you know, for me it's the sort of classic Hays Code type of noir that I'm really in love with. For me, it's the detective character it is this flawed person who is, doing the best they can to live to their own, chaotic, neutral sort of alignment. And they are navigating a really murky world. I definitely identify with that, and I love that. And at the same time, they're unflappable. They can, anything can happen to them, and they are always themselves. They always come back to themselves. And my favorite thing about it, which is sort of not appreciated in terms of like usual Hollywood stories, or maybe any story, is that the lead character very rarely changes. Everything around them, they have this mystery and all these things that they solve, but as a character, they don't change. The only thing that really happens to them is an awakening of themselves. Like they become more themselves, maybe. They become more in touch with themselves. They become more strong in themselves. They never change who they are. Usually, there's an indication that they might within the story. They might change. They might do this. They end up always being the same sort of person that they started out to be. And there's something I find very real and feeling about that. And also, I just love the mysteries of how they are usually. I think as human beings, we always want to solve it. We want an answer. We want things to make sense. And in noir, the mysteries, sometimes the way they make sense is so weird and unsatisfying in a lot of ways. And sometimes they don't quite. And to me, that's a very real, the real way that the world works.
So your conclusion is that noir is possibly more authentic than the general fiction that we point to, because people, even though they say they're going to change, they never really change their core. Right?
I guess it's a kind of cynical thing, but I mean, I believe very strongly that people can heal, and that people can become. I believe in healing. I believe people can heal. I believe people can make conscious efforts to become different than they are. I think that, or to find something about themselves that they don't like and try and, work with that. But do they ever really change? Right? Really? I don't think so.
I think that we remain who we are at our core throughout our lives. We may say we're going to change, but at the end of the day, what's in our makeup is in our makeup. Agree?
Well, yeah, or you're in opposition to it. So let's say that you are an addict, right? You're addicted to something. Mm-hmm. Well, you can be sober. You can become a sober person and be that person, but you were always still addicted to something. Do you know what I mean? You still have that thing. Or let's say that you're somebody who's very angry. You're a really angry person. Well, you can be like, you know what? I don't want to be so angry anymore. I'm going to try and really work on that. And you can work on it. But then your life is about in opposition to that.
Yeah. Well, Laura, I am totally out of time, but that's okay. It's good that we ended it on that note, because it gave us a final thought. Is there anything else you want to communicate about your many projects before we wrap this up?
I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out to me and including me on your show, and I really appreciate it. And I think it's a very cool thing that you're doing. I love that you're writing and like focusing a lot of stuff. You're submitting for the new Bizarre Office series, right?
Well, I'm working on it. I'm giving myself to the 25th of this month, and I'm actually seeing more results now that it's getting down to the wire. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really grateful to you for reaching out to me, and I think that, writing is just it's the best, and I applaud you, and, keep at that. You hear that, guys? She likes me. All right, Laura. Thanks for coming on. It has been my pleasure. Totally. This is. I say this every week, but this has been one of my favorite interviews, and I've still got to talk to Adam Cesare later. I mean, this is.
He's awesome. Yes.
He is, huh? Okay. Well.
He was actually the very, very, very first reviewer I had for Hunt.
Ever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is going to be a packed episode, I'll tell you that. Well, Laura, thanks for joining me, and this is going to be a rare weekend here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have an awesome chat with Adam, and I look forward to hearing more.
Can't understand the reason for such cruelty. It must have something to do with some obscure sexual rite, or with the almost profound respect these primitives have for virginity.
All right, and here is the guest that will close out my show, Adam Cesare. He has a re-release through Deadite Press entitled Tribesmen, which is an homage to the cannibal films of the 70s, and he is also notorious for his contributions to horror such as Video Night, All Night Terror, and perhaps his best work to date, The Summer Job. Adam, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
So, let's launch right into Tribesmen, because this is actually a reprinting of something from, what, was it 2008?
Oh, no, not that long ago. I think it was it was February of 2012 it came out. And it was John Skipp's imprint, Ravenous Shadows, which only lasted about 5 books, I think. But so John Skipp kind of plucked me out of this slush pile, and it was my first book that got released. It wasn't the first one I'd written, but it's the first one that got released, and now it's back out again.
Okay, now let's go over the plot of Tribesmen a little bit. It's the same setup that you see so often with these crews that want to tell a seedy underground story, and they want to pay homage to the cannibal films from Italy, and so they go and they camp smack dab in the middle of cannibal territory, the Amazon, which is rich with scenery and everything, and they slowly begin to fall apart as it's man against the elements, and I think that you covered the dissolution well, and also the filmmaker Tinto Bronze. That is, of course, a nod to Tinto Brass, correct?
Yeah, he's Tito. Yeah, I took out a letter there to make him Tito Brass. Yep, you're right. Tinto Brass. Yeah.
Now, what strikes me about this book the most is that you really had a chance to go kind of full brunt on the homage, but you pull back, of course it has the animal cruelty. I don't know if that's something we should celebrate, but it has the elements that make a good cannibal flick from that time period. But also there's enough there that makes it original, like when he puts on the pig head like a mask and goes around killing, right?
Yeah, well, it's an homage and it's not, because I have a really love-hate relationship with those movies. I find them fascinating, and I find the historical background of them incredibly fascinating. But I kind of find them I don't like the animal cruelty. I find it off-putting. I don't like kind of the racist overtones to it. I find that off-putting. So this book, I kind of want it to be not so much an homage, but also maybe a little bit of a critique too, because I think all the filmmaker characters are like the antagonists, and it also, we also should mention that it's a supernatural book. The threat is supernatural, so it's kind of like The Shining on an island, like The Shining meets Survivor. So it's my way of talking about movies, and I used to be a film major. I used to write papers about movies. So when I started writing fiction, I feel like my fiction were kind of hopefully entertaining papers on movies. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for there. And I really do I do like certain cannibal films, and I'll be seeing The Man from Big River and Cannibal Holocaust. They're doing a screening of that in a couple weeks here in Philly. But so I will be going to that. But I didn't want to make the book a wholehearted endorsement of these movies, because I think some people, not that there's a wrong way to like something, but I think some people like the wrong things, or like the right things in the wrong way.
You know, I'm glad you say that about the animal cruelty, because the turtle scene in Cannibal Holocaust, you know, I think that I don't think I was ready to see that at the age I did, like early 20s. I think I was still I still would have been okay without seeing those just visceral images, and it did bother me. You know, a lot of people swear by watching the uncut version to preserve the artist's vision. You know, but you know, I don't know. I guess the way I see it, animals kind of look to us for help in some ways, you know, because we're bigger. But it is unsettling to see that those animals and to know that they really did perish, right?
Yeah, and they did die for some guy's movie. I mean, as much as I agree with the whole, usually I agree with the, like, oh, you should watch uncut, you should see, like, you know, a director's vision. When something's exploitation, which it certainly is, there's a certain level of, like, artist, like, how much of an artist is P.T. Barnum, someone who's just, you know, shocking for shock's sake. Like, I like that. I've seen it. I don't really want to see it again. I like that Grindhouse Releasings disc comes with that alternate cut where you can watch it without the animal cruelty. I like that's an option for people.
Right. Now, what brought Jeff to the table that he wanted to re-release it through Deadite?
That was John Skip again. We got the rights back from Ravenous after they weren't so much doing some stuff for the book, like not a whole lot of promotion. There weren't any more books coming out through the Ravenous Shadows title, Ravenous Shadows line. So, it was John's idea to approach Jeff, and I'm a big fan of Deadite Press. I'm a big fan of Eraserhead, so it kind of seemed like the natural fit. And I think the new cover is gorgeous. I think it's amazing. I mean, I like the old cover, which was Paula Handback, but the new cover is Matthew Revere, and I really like it.
Yeah, Revere really seems to be in demand right now.
Yeah, I mean, he did the cover for The First One You Expect, too, so I'm really lucky I have two covers from him.
Speaking of The First One You Expect, walk the listeners a little bit through I guess the synopsis for that, and how this poor guy Tony gets so far in over his head with just trying to, you know, be a micro budget filmmaker, because it's fascinating the way you pulled it off.
Well, I was approached by J. David Osborne, who I think you've had on. Well, it's not this show, but you had him on the Surreal Grotesque, right back when that was a.
Yes, he was a good interview. He gave me everything that was his personality. It was great.
He's a funny guy. He's a nice guy too. He approached me and asked if I had something for Broken River. And a lot of times, like, people will ask me if I have, not to toot my own horn that I'm in demand or anything, but if people ask me if I have stuff for them, I don't have any trunk novels. Like, I don't have things ready to go. Like, I have to basically, like, make things made to order. So, I really like crime fiction, and I really like noirs, so I wanted to write one for him. So I just tried to figure out how I could mesh the stuff I usually do, horror stuff, with maybe like a Roman noir, like The Postman Always Rings Twice or something like that. And this is kind of what I came up with. So
the Tony guy, he's got this semi-successful franchise going on a shoestring budget, and the character, the slasher villain, is played by his friend, whose name is escaping me right now.
Yeah, I think is it Bert? I can't. It's been a while, but I know that in the horror fandom, in horror culture, there's this kind of subsect of independent filmmakers that kind of make things on a shoestring budget, kind of film in their own backyards, things like that. And those always kind of interest me, because you really have to be dedicated and maybe even a little bit delusional to really to like really throw yourself into these things and making these movies. And it's something I both really admire, and I'm like a little bit scared of. So I thought that would be a neat kind of down on his luck character, because in crime and noir you always start with that, you know, maybe a little bit seedy, maybe a little bit unlucky kind of character, and I thought, what better way than a guy that's trying to hustle his own movies, sell the DVDs through his own website, you know.
You're right, and then he auditions Anna, who is more fucking nuts than either of them. She's certifiable, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big part of the book is the fact that it's told through Tony's perspective, where maybe the reader's picking up on hints or red flags for this girl that he's not, and she has this idea that they should start a Kickstarter. It's this whole maybe money making scheme, like his ambition overleaping itself to enter a level of mainstream that maybe is not attainable to him. But her way of going about that is illegal, to put it mildly.
Right. Yeah, without giving it away, she actually commits murder on screen, and he doesn't believe it at first. He's trying to figure out how she achieved that effect, because, you know, I didn't do that to that knife. How did she get that nice, clean motion and everything, you know? So it's a novel about obsession and ambition, and how some people are willing to sacrifice anything to attain success. And do you see a lot of that in publishing there? I mean, you're connected, obviously, to a lot of individuals in small presses. You're connected to a lot of people who move in those circles. Do you see a lot of that ambition, or do you think that most of them are realistic?
I think everyone I know. I mean, it's easy to write and say, like, people are, you know, nuts and they'll do anything to get ahead. I'm incredibly lucky in that most of the people I know and have worked with are really down to earth and would go nowhere near as far as the characters in the book go. But I get that, and I also feel a little weird myself every time I have to do like self promotion or have to, you know, put up a link like buy my book. Like, there's always that like moment of self loathing after you like click to put up the link, and you're like, oh man, does anyone really want to hear about this? Does anyone want to, you know, really want to hear about me? But I'm also like a firm believer in that whole idea of like, you really got to hustle if you want, you know, if you want to make it.
True. Why, you don't feel like you're selling out or anything, do you?
Oh no, I hope I'm not. I try to keep it to a minimum, my stuff, but you never know. With Facebook, you never know who's blocked you at this point and doesn't want to hear about it anymore. But I try to keep it reasonable.
Okay. Now, Sam Hain Publishing, you've had quite a past with them so far. Are you still working with them? Are you still on good terms with them?
Yeah. I don't know how familiar you are with the editor. It's Don Dioria.
What's their name?
His name's Don Dioria. He was the I don't know if you remember the Leisure paperbacks. He was the head editor at Leisure, so everything they put out, I mean, Richard Lehman, Jack Ketchum, Brian Keene, he's worked with kind of the best in the industry. So when he went over to Sam Hain, my first book, Video Night, was being written before Leisure was gone, wasn't a thing anymore before he had left Leisure. So that was the original intended market for that. Like, so Don's always been someone I wanted to work with, and then getting to work with him was kind of a dream the first time, so hey, I'll probably keep sending him books until he tells me to go away. Okay.
Now, your novel Video Night had received quite the high mark of praise by Fangoria. How did that feel, and have they followed your career ever since?
I've gotten some good. I've been really lucky to get good press in a lot of places. I mean, when Video Night first came out, it had a Publisher's Weekly review, which was pretty cool, I thought. Yeah, I like Fangoria. I've actually I met Tony Timpone at the first World Horror Convention I ever went to, and I really harassed him to try to see if I can get in the pages. And I even have I have one byline for Fangoria because I did a book review for them that was in one of their issues a few years ago.
Now, cinema seems to be enshrined in your work. It comes up over and over again. There's this golden reverence for the cinema and what happens, when we give ourselves over to a movie for 2 hours. And I guess it's had a huge impact on your life for you to write so much about it, right?
Yeah, it is. It's one of the. It was like the first thing. I've always been a reader, but it was kind of my first love in a way. Like I love movies. I grew up loving movies. I kind of went to school wanting to make movies. Realized maybe that wasn't for me, and then kind of looked around. I knew I wanted to do something creative, and I knew I read a lot. I was all through middle school, high school was a voracious reader. So I figured I'd give it a shot, and that's how it's filtered into my work. And I've tried to not be that guy for everything, to not be the movie guy, but it always kind of seems to work its way into my books. Even the books that aren't explicitly about movies. Movies come up in Summer Job. Movies come up in the book that I'm gonna have coming out with Sam Hain in November.
Can you talk about that yet?
Yeah, it's called Exponential. I actually just finished it. It's a giant monster story. The way I was coming up with it is I really like working in subgenres, and I don't really want to repeat myself. I don't want to work in something that I've worked in before. So I basically sat down, I think it was in New Orleans, with Don. We were having a drink and talking about what my next book was going to be, and I had him look on the publishing schedule to see what he already had listed, and I was like, well, what's the subgenre you don't have? And that's how it came up.
Now, when you say giant monster, like Cloverfield or Kaiju...
I shouldn't say giant monster, because it's not a kaiju book. It's a medium-range monster. Maybe something like Tremors or Razorback, if you've seen that film.
Oh, Razorback was phenomenal. Yeah, I've never seen another movie like that. Yeah,
so something like it's set out in the Las Vegas area, the outskirts of Vegas. It's a medium-sized monster. It's called exponential because it keeps growing. So there's the idea that it could grow to be kaiju size, but for the bulk of the action of the book, it's about the size of a truck.
Okay. Now, so you say you went to school for film, correct?
Yes.
So, do you have a more intimate understanding for how to string a story together with cinematic storytelling? Are you familiar with the techniques, the terms, and everything?
Well, yeah. I mean, I took screenwriting classes, so when you're trying to learn screenwriting, they really harp on the hero's journey and 3-act structure and things like that. Things that don't necessarily are not like a one-to-one fit with novels, I feel like. So I know kind of about that story structure. I know how movies are supposed to play out, and I try to purposefully not do that in my books, because I feel like books that are trying to be movies are not always the best books. I don't know if you've come across this, but sometimes I'm reading a book that I'll not know a lot about. It'll feel like a pitch for a movie. It'll feel like the author is just like, oh wow, I hope this gets optioned. So it ends up feeling like someone's describing a movie they once saw to you, and I'm not that big a fan of that kind of writing.
Okay, so there's no reason why a book shouldn't behave as a book, and a movie shouldn't behave as a movie, correct?
Exactly, and I love movies, so I love talking about movies, and I love the themes and ideas of enjoying movies and loving cinema. But I try not to write annotated screenplays, basically.
Right on. One technique or approach that fascinates me that I've read about in screenwriting. I've read about it quite in depth. It's called Save the Cat. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the idea that it's kind of like leaping to that happy ending, right? It's the idea that, or am I wrong? Do I have a
Okay. Save the Cat is when the protagonist, whomever your main character, your hero is, he has to do something early on, or it could be at the end, but generally it's at the beginning of the story. And he has to do something he has to kind of go out of his way to help someone or something, like an animal or a person, that he has to go out of his way to help them, and that is to build him up as a do-gooder, like an honorable character, you know.
Protagonist, or yeah. There's a book called Save the Cat, right? There's a screenwriting book.
Right.
But it's another, yeah.
It focuses on that, just about, I believe.
I'm sorry, I stepped over you. What was your question about the Save the Cat?
Just if you were familiar with it, if you believed in it.
I have an interesting view of the idea of having a likable protagonist. I don't think your protagonist has to be particularly likable. I think they just have to be interesting. I think I want to read about them. They don't have to be the best person in the world, because I totally don't practice what I preach, because in most of my books I have likable protagonists. But in First One You Expect, I think Tony's kind of pathetic and kind of a scumbag before the book starts. And he gets kind of worse, but I do think he's interesting, and I think that hopefully readers think he's interesting. So maybe it's a good idea, 9 times out of 10 to save the cat, but there is that special 10th time, I feel like, where you don't have to adhere to that rule.
Okay, gotcha. Real quick, an example of Save the Cat. Now that I can remember it, one that they provide is like in that old Disney movie Aladdin, when they're about to whip the street rat kids, who are just asking for food or something, and Aladdin jumps in and catches the whip and rips it out of their hands.
I remember that. Yeah.
That is an example of Save the Cat right there, and also in I think. Gosh, I can't remember the name, but it was an Al Pacino movie where he tells the father to go away when they're doing the sting operation. And he's got his kid with him, and they're about to conduct a sting operation, and he's got that guy there thinking that he's about to win tickets to a ball game or something. And he, at the last minute before they launch the sting operation, he tells him, you're at the wrong address. Go away.
You're with the kid. Yeah.
That is another example of Save the Cat, and that happens, I believe, at the end. But anyway. Nice little digression there, but getting back to the First One You Expect, have you known women like Anna in your real life?
No, not really. And I don't. One of the tough things about writing in the noir and writing in a hard-boiled kind of narrative is you fall. I feel like a lot of people fall into cliches where they, you have to have a femme fatale. And I try to, I don't like that. I try to have, positive representation of everyone, like men and women. But I figured for this book, since it was this noir, why don't we just have a femme fatale who's not even really a femme fatale? She's just straight up psychopathic. And one of the initial notes that I got back from David is that he didn't feel like he knew enough about her, and I'm usually really good with editors' notes and addressing editors' notes, but I kind of put my foot down on that because I wanted it to almost be like an unsolvable puzzle. Like you get a lot of different pieces of background about her. There's this scene where he's driving in her car, and it might be her mother's car, and there are cigarettes in the car, and he doesn't know if she smokes. He's trying to put together whether her mother smokes, and it's this whole idea that if Tony's trying to figure her out, trying to puzzle her out what her motivations are, then the reader will naturally be trying to do that. So there's this idea that there really could be a lot more depth there, and we're trying to tease it out. But because we have such a close connection to Tony in the perspective, because he doesn't know what it is, and because he's not a very good detective, and he's not trying to investigate her that much, we will never really know what's up with her.
You know, in some ways, I think that's a good thing, because I can't tell you the times that I've watched a movie or a TV show or something, and they answered one of those long, sought-after, questions, something that puzzled me, and I finally got the answer, and it's like, fuck you, that's bullshit, like.
That's not the answer I wanted.
For instance, I mean the whole 2 or 3 final seasons of Lost, for instance, but if David Lynch had come right out and explained to us why the cowboy in Mulholland Drive was either going to appear 2 more times or 1 more time, then I think it would have deflated that scene and its power so horribly. Agree?
Yeah, I think that's kind of 2 perfect examples, because in like long form narrative TV, you get this connection to a character or a plot, especially in something like Lost, when there's like a central mystery, and it goes on for so long, it goes on for years and years and years, and when you finally do get answers, it never really feels satisfying, even if it's a good answer. And Lynch, I mean, is, as a filmmaker, and not just in his like most surreal work, maybe in his a little bit more grounded work, he does that withholding. He does that idea that there are certain unsolvable mysteries inside the movie.
So, I think the best approach for this kind of fiction that you're working with, 2 more examples. Osborne with By the Time We Leave Here, We'll Be Friends, and my guest last segment, Laura Lee Bahr, with her novel Haunt. It's more rewarding for the reader if you build it like a puzzle, and you rearrange things and you take certain things out so they have to resolve it themselves, right?
I mean, I don't do it as much. I kind of do it in that one book. I am a much more straightforward writer than both of them, I think. Even though I love those books, I remember reading Haunt right when it came out. It was a few years ago now, I think. But I love that structure, how it's like a choose your own adventure book, but the choices are taken out. So it has this puzzle quality to it. It has this piece that you're getting. It has this feel like you bought a puzzle. You bought like a jigsaw puzzle, and then it's come with a few extra pieces that you can't possibly connect to anything. Yeah, I like books like that. I like books that make me think, but I also don't think that I'm anywhere near as good as either of those writers at that kind of thing.
Well, you mentioned the cigarettes and the allusions to it possibly not being Anna's car, and that made me think of that.
Yeah. I like that. I like giving little. It was a crime book. It was a noir book, so I was like, I should have some mystery elements to it. But wouldn't it be great if you couldn't solve the mystery? So that's kind of where I was. I do think those 2 writers are definitely an influence.
Great. Is this a golden age of horror we're living through currently, as you've stated in the past, whether in fiction or movies?
I think so, and I think more so in fiction. I think there's so much good stuff out there that it's almost a little intimidating, because it's really hard to read all the good stuff, because you'll find authors you like, and you'll find people you like reading, and you want to read their new stuff, but you'll also hear great things about other people, and you want to try them. I think Stephen Graham Jones is a great example of that, because he's so prolific. It's really hard to if you're not a super fast reader like I am, like I feel like I could just read his books and then I would never pick up anyone else's, because he releases so many of them.
Yeah, and
like that too. I mean, he's really prolific.
Who?
Shane McKenzie.
Shane is very prolific, and he's even trying his hand at Bizarro now. Isn't that something?
Yeah, he's got a few now.
What about Laird Barron? Huh? Laird Barron?
His new book, Toilet Babies, looks insane.
I know. How about Laird Barron? What do you think of him? I think he's like the new Lovecraft almost.
Oh, Laird Barron?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's far and away one of my favorites. Yeah, I really love his work. I really like. I don't know if you've read Megan Abbott.
Which one?
She's a crime writer, darker stuff.
I'm gonna have to check her out.
Yeah.
Now,
there's a ton of people.
Right on. Yeah. Now, what about cinema? Do you think we're kind of in a slump there, or is that a golden age too?
I think because of I think maybe mainstream horror cinema is not exactly booming, but I think because of new distribution methods like video on demand, I think a lot more movies that would normally just play festivals and maybe sit on shelves and not really get proper releases are much more accessible, because I feel like every week on pay-per-view there's a new movie you can rent that's a mid-range or even low-budget independent film that has played all these festivals and gotten good word of mouth. And usually you wouldn't be able to, back even 10 years ago, you'd have to wait for someone to pick it up and release it on DVD or something like that, or get it through backwards channels trying to see these movies. And now they're very accessible. You can just, and it makes sure the filmmakers get the money instead of people pirating them. $6 on opening day, instead of having to travel to a theater, you can just rent something. Yeah.
Now let me get your opinion, since kind of pick your film major brain here if I can. The hyper intellectualization of the horror genre with Cabin in the Woods a few years back. Now there are mixed feelings on that. I personally loved it, even though I know it's a bit more mainstream than what I'm used to. And then we have Human Centipede 1 and 2, which push the envelope, just into oblivion with the gross out and the graphic violation. I mean, just it's horrible. But what are your personal thoughts on those two that are so starkly contrasted?
I really liked Cabin in the Woods. Right when it's one of those movies that I'm so glad I didn't see any trailers for or anything. Like, I just went in blind. Like, I'd heard good things about it. It kind of took forever to come out, if I remember. And then once I finally saw it, I really did like it. I actually wasn't a huge fan of the ending, but I've since kind of come around after subsequent rewatches and reading what people have thought about it. And I do enjoy the whole thing now. I haven't seen Human Centipede 2. I know it's like I should be seeing everything since I like this genre. I kind of liked the first one. I kind of liked that it wasn't as extreme as the idea behind it made it sound. It was almost kind of, there were moments of it played for laughs. And from what I understand, the second one is what the first one was kind of promised to be, and I kind of have less interest in seeing that. I would almost rather thing be a ridiculous premise. And the movie was so well sold on its premise. You saw that. I mean, it became basically a meme in and of itself. And I want to see it. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Maybe. Hey, don't see it until you're ready. Trust me. But you spoke very highly on your blog about Adam Wingard's latest breakthrough hit, You're Next. Do you think Adam Wingard is the future of horror?
I think that whole kind of brat pack they have going there, they make some good movies. I really liked VHS 2, which I think he was involved in, and I certainly know some of the screenwriters were involved in, Simon Barrett, Ty West, those guys. I like that idea because those guys clearly are fans of the genre and clearly are using their connection to each other to get movies made. And I really, really liked Your Next. I thought it was for how it was being marketed as an extreme home invasion movie. For it to be as fun and as funny as it was, I was very pleasantly surprised.
Right on. Now, let's touch base a little bit on this serial that you have going on Dreadit, and it's
Reddit. Yep.
Yeah, it's Leprechaun in the Hood, the musical, and you collaborated with Cameron Pierce and Shane McKenzie. Now, is this a faithful adaptation of Leprechaun in the Hood, or have you embellished a bit?
Oh, it is not at all a faithful adaptation of Leprechaun. It really is its own story with its own characters. It's the joke kind of is, and in recent years there's been a rash of musical adaptations of cult movies. There was one for Xanadu. There was one for Evil Dead the musical. So I think it's more of a parody of that phenomena. It's a group of friends trying to put on their own musical version of Leprechaun in the Hood, and falling prey to a different leprechaun than the one in the films, who just happens to be the one that the filmmakers had paid for the likeness of. And since these guys didn't pay to use the likeness or file any proper copyright, go through any proper copyright channel, this mythological creature is coming to kill them. It was Cameron's idea, so Cameron, I can't take really any credit for the wonderful title or the premise, but he did approach Shane and I about working on it, and I think we had a whole lot of fun.
So, was it a little bit intimidating? Not to diminish your own stature and standing in the community, but was it a little bit intimidating working with Shane or Cameron or both of them?
Oh, both of them are. I mean, more well known than I am, and I'm not starstruck, but I wanted to make sure I could keep up. I wanted to make sure I was gonna pull my own weight and have my prose be as good as theirs. And it was a little challenging at times, but I think they're both so cool and they're both so modest and welcoming that by the second day I was writing on it, I don't think it was a non-issue. We were just buddies by the end.
And is this is due out through Broken River Books later this fall, correct?
Yeah, I think it's late August, so maybe end of the summer, beginning of fall, it'll be out.
Do you see yourself working with Broken River again on true crime novellas?
I really liked working with them. I really liked how First One You Expect turned out. So maybe I don't know. I would have to come up with an idea, and David would have to be okay with editing me again, which I'm sure can be a chore.
Now, are there some other presses that you're at least, your interest is piqued about, that you would like to work with in the future? I don't know, maybe Civil Coping Mechanisms, Lazy Fascist. Have you considered these routes?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I love those guys. I love the stuff they put out. I love Civil Coping Mechanisms. They put out some really good books. Some of those Nick Antosca books they put out were really good. Yeah, and Cameron's done a great job. Cameron and Kristen with Lazy Fascist. Yeah, I'm working with Shock Totem. I don't know if you know them. They're
the magazine, right?
They put out a magazine, a great kind of quarterly journal, and they're just now kind of breaking into books, to putting out books, and they're putting out one by me. It's going to be like a limited edition hardcover along with paperback and ebook.
Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, it's called Zero Lives Remaining, and it's I really like video games, and I haven't ever written about video games in any of my books, so I figured I'd do a haunted house story, but instead of a house, it's a haunted video arcade. That's been done for a little while, but because the production of the book, I mean, it's going to have interior illustrations and these cool liner notes. It's going to be a really big production, so it's taken a little while. And I think the paperback is set to come out in August, but I don't know what's going on with the limited edition because it's such an involved process.
So just to recap, you have Exponential, that's coming later this year through Sam Hain Publishing. You have Zero Lives Remaining, that's due out either later this year or early next year through, who was it?
Yeah.
Shock Totem. And also the Leprechaun in the Hood the musical out through Broken River Books late August. So that's 3 that you have in the pipeline. Any others?
I have too many in the pipeline, I guess. Yeah, I have a few more things that are coming out. There's one I can't talk about yet. And then I wrote on another book with Shane called Jackpot, which is about a serial killer that wins the lottery. Again, that was Shane's idea, and he just brought me on. He also brought on Christopher Ruffty and David Bernstein. So it's the 4 of us, and that'll be out through Sinister Grin Press.
Oh, wow, those guys are renowned. They're very prestigious.
Yeah, no, it was a good time, and they're all known for their a little bit more hardcore than I usually tend to go.
So we've got a serial killer that wins. I'm sorry. Okay, we've got a serial killer that wins the lottery. We've got a haunted video arcade. I mean, this is some fascinating stuff you're laying on me here.
Yeah, I guess I got like the Roger Corman high concept churn of the mountain thing going.
Okay, real quick, because I got a chance to read the first entry of Leprechaun in the Hood the musical. I saw your defense of Jason X. How do you sleep at night?
How do I sleep at night for my defense of Jason X?
Yeah.
I think that was a character's defense of Jason X. But if you really want to go into it, I can talk about how I like Jason X.
I got to hear this. Yeah.
I think Jason X came at a time. I mean, I much prefer Jason X to Freddy versus Jason. I think if you're gonna go silly, you should go really silly, and it doesn't play safe. It's a silly movie that knows it's silly, and usually I'm not a big fan of so bad it's good cinema, especially when it's done on purpose. I feel like those things have to be kind of organic. But I genuinely like. I think if you're a slasher fan and you're really into slashers just for the gags, the gore effects, and the kills, and not exactly in it for believable plots or characters, I think I have a hard time seeing anyone that wouldn't like that movie. I mean, it's got Tony Todd in it. It's got someone being frozen, their face being frozen in what is it?
Antifreeze or
not antifreeze. What is it called?
I know what you're talking about. The stuff that freezes on contact, right?
Nitrogen. Yeah, liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
The face, and then he breaks the face. Like, come on, like, it's silly, but they were like, okay, we have Jason in space. What kind of kills can Jason have in space? There's a scene on a holodeck for Star Trek fans. It's got a lot of gags that I like, and I think are pretty funny.
Okay, so you're big on the tongue-in-cheek, self-referential stuff, right?
The thing is, I'm usually not. Like, I'm not like the biggest fan of things like Sharknado, things that are engineered to get people to say, "Oh, that's silly. Let me watch it." But I think at that point in that franchise, in the 10th movie, Jason had gone to Manhattan very briefly. There isn't so much that you can do unless you're going to do a super serious kind of reboot of the material. And I guess before you do a super serious reboot, something has to kind of burn itself out, like a phoenix. And I think, what a way to go if you're going to go into space and have it made into a cyborg.
Okay. Now, one last question before we wrap this up. We're almost 45 minutes, and it's been a blast, man. Thank you so much. You feel that Summer Job is your best work to date. Why?
I do. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm proud of everything that I have out. I'm very happy with everything. There's no book that I would tell people not to read. I think everything. I'm really proud of the work I've been able to do, and I'm glad that I'm consistently proud of what I put out. But I think the Summer Job, just because from a structural standpoint, just from writing it, I feel like I put so much more work into it because it's maybe something like it's a folk horror, something like The Wicker Man or Blood on Satan's Claw. Those are movies I really like. That's a subgenre I really like. The Dennis Wheatley, Satanist subgenre. and it's moved, and those are usually British, so it's moved to the outside of Boston. And it was just very difficult to write because it's a lot more serious book than I'm used to writing. It remains much closer to its protagonist. I'm usually floating around. I'm usually jumping perspectives, different protagonists. Claire, the hero of the book, you're pretty much with her the whole time, except for one key moment in the book where you switch and you go see what the other characters are doing. I'm very proud of it, and I'm glad that a lot of the press and a lot of the response to it has been positive.
You know, I'm about 15 pages into that one actually right now, and I got to say, I really like the older. I don't know, the older, I think he's older, English gentleman who's trying to convince her not to go, or at least rethink her travel plans.
Yeah, I put them in the beginning there as a prologue, kind of as a wink to the idea that this is a British subgenre I'm playing in, and wouldn't it be funny if these British tourists came to America and this is what they find, because it's kind of not what they're expecting to find. But yeah, I'm happy with the whole thing, and I like that you like it.
I'm sure I will be, yeah. But you know, Tribesmen blew me away. You know, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect going in. You know, but I think maybe cannibals are coming back in a big way right now. With what?
Yeah. Eli Roth's has a cannibal movie coming out, The Green Inferno.
That's right. Yeah, and you know he's seen all those. Hopefully the animals won't have to suffer this time, though, right?
Yeah, hopefully we have ASPCA people on set. Yes.
Well, Adam, thank you so much, man, and it's been a pleasure. I'd love to have you back on when any of your future projects surface.
Yeah, Jeremy, it's been great. Thanks, and I would love to come back. So.
That does it for another episode. Next weekend, Scott McClanahan and Noah Cesare. It's going to be great. But for now, I have a date with naked pictures of Shiri Appleby, which are a lot like the truth, because they're out there. Now go out and feel something. Surreal Sermons was taped before a live alternate universe.